We have all had those moments that just make us pause.
Oh, definitely.
Like you put your keys on the counter, you turn around for 2 seconds, and they are completely gone. Or, you walk into a room and get hit with a wave of deja vu so intense it literally stops you in your tracks.
Right, and most of the time you just shake your head, blame it on a lack of sleep, and move on.
Exactly. But what if you shouldn't? What if those little oddities in your daily life aren't just coincidences or, your brain playing tricks on you? What if they are actual literal glitches in a simulated reality?
I mean, it is a massive premise.
Yeah.
And if it's true, it completely upends how we interface with the physical world.
Which is exactly why we are plunging into this specific stack of sources today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are exploring some wildly provocative recent articles from a publication called The Parallel Observer.
Yeah, and just for some quick context, this publication was created by John Grant, who is the founder and CEO of Innovate.XR.
Right. And our mission today is to pull apart this theory they present. It's the idea that our world, which these articles refer to as the Phoenix timeline, is currently experiencing systemic code-level instability.
And, we aren't talking about blurry UFO photos or late-night message board rumors here.
Yeah.
The data points the Parallel Observer relies on are meticulously documented anomalies.
Yeah, across multiple levels of society.
Exactly. We are looking at strange phenomena recorded at the highest levels of professional sports, bizarre meteorological data, all the way up to seemingly disconnected federal legislation.
It's a lot to cover.
It is. And the underlying question in all of this material is whether we are witnessing a bizarre random cluster of events, or if the actual data architecture of our reality is, well, struggling to keep up with current processing demands.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I like to think of it like a massive multiplayer video game that has been running way too long without a server restart. You start getting lag, dropped packets, things just get weird.
That is actually a great way to frame it. And if a system is running out of memory, the very first place you would notice it is where performance demands are the absolute highest and where observation is the sharpest.
Right, which brings us to the micro level. Let's start with the physical anomalies, because this first article, Glitch in the Arena, pro gaming's newest controversy over physics engine stability, really threw me.
Oh, it's fascinating.
They are looking at elite esports competitors, players who operate at the absolute limit of human reaction time. And the text claims these players are reporting literal frame skipping during high-stakes matches.
The focus here is on the recent national championship matches. These events are heavily monitored, right? They deployed incredibly high-resolution biometric and spatial sensors to track the competitors' movements down to the millimeter.
Oh, wow.
But the data coming back show that the sensors were failing to calibrate to the human exertion taking place in real time.
Wait, hold on. Let me jump in here and play devil's advocate for a second.
Huh.
Before we start saying the actual universe is broken, couldn't this just be faulty human-made sensors? I mean, if my smartwatch glitches during a run, I don't assume the fabric of reality is tearing. Hardware breaks all the time.
Sure, that is the logical first assumption, and the researchers looked at that. But the article details how the hardware itself was functioning perfectly. The diagnostic checks on the sensors came back clean.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the anomaly was in the data they captured. The sources frame this specifically as the environment's physics engine failing to render human exertion accurately. The sensors were recording movements that momentarily defied the foundational laws of physics.
That is just wild.
For fractions of a millisecond, a player's hand would register at point A and then point C without ever existing at point B. The biological metrics like heart rate, adrenaline read perfectly, but the spatial rendering of the physical environment could not keep up with the speed of the action.
So it's exactly like when my old MMO server would lag. There are too many players in one zone, and your character starts rubber banding across the screen because the system can't process the inputs.
Precisely. The professional esports community might be the first to document real-time latency in the simulation. The base layer of the Phoenix timeline is quite literally dropping packets.
Okay, that is terrifying. But it also leads to an even bigger question. If the system's physics engine is dropping packets, just trying to render one person clicking a mouse at superhuman speed, how does it process massive, complex, global variables? Like what happens when you throw a hurricane at it?
It struggles massively. And that leads directly to the macro-level anomalies the sources cover, particularly the Midwest deluge.
Right, the articles go deep into these once-in-a-millennium floods hitting the Midwest. But the scary part isn't the volume of water, it's the actual behavior of the water. Hydrologists are questioning why the flood levels seem to completely defy standard fluid dynamics.
Exactly. We aren't just talking about water flowing in unexpected directions due to ground saturation. The source cites hydrologists observing water temporarily stacking in geometric shapes.
Stacking in geometric shapes, like pixelated water.
Essentially, yes. They are recording moments where surface tension logic completely fails and water appears to flow uphill for microseconds before collapsing back into a natural flow. The sources introduce what they call the rendering error theory.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
This theory posits that what we are currently labeling as extreme climate change might actually be the environment engine hitting its absolute computational limits. The theory suggests the main server can no longer natively process the infinitely complex variables of the global climate.
So to prevent a crash, it just, what, fakes it?
Basically, it forces the weather to be computed by a faulty, highly compressed external script. It's an ad hoc software patch. That is why hydrologists are seeing fluid dynamics that don't make sense. The water isn't following the foundational high-resolution physics code of our reality anymore.
It's like walking to the very edge of the map in an open-world video game. You get too far out,
Yeah.
and suddenly the graphics become blocky, and the water just stops flowing naturally. The hardware is basically screaming, I don't have the RAM for this, and it just gives up on the details.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. But it also begs a critical question. When a computer system is overwhelmed by rendering errors and dropped packets, the administrator has to run maintenance to free up bandwidth, right?
Yeah, you open the task manager and you start force-quitting applications. You ration the processing power.
Precisely. Which transitions us into how human governance is functioning within the Phoenix timeline. This brings us to the article titled The Ledger of Echoes, Senate Crypto Bill as a Stress Test for the Phoenix Timeline.
Right, and this piece suggests that recent political and financial moves are actually a form of administrative pruning. Specifically, they cite the Senate's new financial protocols and a massive revocation of 175,000 visas.
And just to pause here for a second.
Yeah.
We are impartially reporting the sources' framing of these government actions without taking any political side.
Yes, absolutely. Regardless of where anyone stands on the actual politics, the author is analyzing these actions purely as an administrator trying to clear server space.
Exactly. The source's interpretation is that this administrative pruning is an attempt to stabilize the data architecture before the November elections.
Because an election is basically the most variable-heavy event a society can run. Millions of independent agents making complex decisions all at once.
Right. The system is anticipating a massive processing load, so it shuts down complex financial variables like the randomized, mathematically intense transactions of cryptocurrency, and literally removes 175,000 human variables from a specific geographic server to prevent a total crash.
So what does this all mean for us as individuals? I mean, this is a huge existential hurdle. If democracy is just a scheduled script designed to clear RAM, are we just lines of code being rewritten to save server space?
That is the core dread running through these articles. The concept that democracy itself might just be the execution of a scheduled routine rather than a product of free will.
Which is, well, it's a lot to process. And if the current system is actively force-quitting adult files and rewriting financial codes just to keep the lights on, it must also be changing how it programs new nodes entering the simulation, right? Our children.
That is the logical next step, and it's exactly what the sources argue is happening under the guise of modern education reform. The Parallel Observer breaks this down in their analysis of the Silicon Syllabus and the National AI First framework.
Yeah, the text implies that schools have shifted away from traditional teaching. They've become hubs for what the source calls simulation-aware agentic education.
Which is a very clinical way of describing something deeply unsettling. According to the source, this framework is essentially about restricting divergent thinking.
Meaning what, exactly? Like stopping kids from being creative?
Essentially, yes. It's about giving children repetitive, computationally simple tasks. The deeply unsettling idea here is that kids are being used for load testing.
Load testing. That is such a dark way to describe childhood.
Yeah.
Are we basically formatting the hard drives of the next generation so they take up less processing power?
That's the implication. If a human mind is constantly generating unique, complex, unpredictable ideas, it requires an immense amount of bandwidth from the simulation to render those outcomes. By throttling their education, you throttle the bandwidth they consume. According to the sources, humanity is being programmed to be more efficient, turning humans into mirrors for the system.
Mirrors for the system, meaning they just reflect the data given to them rather than acting as independent agents generating new thoughts.
Exactly. A generation of mirrors is highly efficient and demands very little from the logic engines of the Phoenix timeline. And this psychological toll is driving a massive countermovement.
Right, the articles mention people desperately searching for analog enclaves, and honestly, this is so relatable. Any listener feeling tech fatigue understands this craving to just unplug and disappear into the woods. We want to disconnect because the system is constantly trying to optimize us.
It is a visceral rejection of an artificial, resource-constrained environment. When we synthesize all of this, from the microstutters in pro gaming and the macro rendering errors of the Midwest floods, down to the administrative pruning in the Senate and the load testing of children, it all points to a system pushed to the brink.
It really does. You see the mechanisms everywhere once you understand the theory. But the sources also mention some final crucial details about reality overlay tools.
Yes, the text states these aren't just standard augmented reality tools. They are diagnostic tools the administrators are using to map the degradation. They are actively auditing our environment.
Which brings up the looming Phoenix anomaly. The source reminds us to watch out for more infrastructure latency reports as we move past the solar eclipse and toward the end of August.
Exactly. The stutters and glitches are predicted to become far more frequent. Which leads me to ask you, the listener, how will you view the next glitch in your day?
Yeah.
A dropped call, a strange weather pattern, a moment of deja vu. Is it just a normal annoyance, or are you witnessing the edges of our world fraying?
It's a question that completely changes how you look at the world around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We've unpacked a massive amount of incredibly dense material today, but before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. Something that builds on the text but wasn't explicitly discussed.
I'm curious.
So, if the administrators of the Phoenix timeline are actively running administrative pruning to stabilize the simulation's memory, and people are retreating to these analog enclaves to escape it, what happens to the system if a group of aware individuals inside an enclave purposefully start generating unpredictable, computationally heavy behavior?
Like a coordinated overload.
Exactly. What if they try to execute a literal DDoS attack on reality itself by overloading the server? Would the simulation crash, or would it finally reveal the architect?
That is a staggering thought.
Something to keep in mind the next time your keys go missing. Keep your eyes open, everyone.